Oh yeah, we knew it. We knew it was possible, y'all. There we go, y'all. That's not bad. Hey guys, I'm Caleb Everett, and this is A Month to Master, where for the next 30 days, I'm breaking my back to master the sport of fishing. Okay, so I'm officially over the halfway point of mastering fishing. And thankfully, all the hard work I've been putting in, all the studying, all the knot tying, the reading, it's all finally starting to pay off. In case you're wondering how I am mastering this sport, easy, index cards. Okay, but I'm doing a lot more than that. For at least an hour a day, I study index cards, watch YouTube videos, read forums, do every bit of research that I can about the sport. A major problem I've started running into though is that I'm actually studying so much information that it's kind of starting to cloud my brain a little bit. I think that that's just the price you pay when you try to drink from a fire hose, kind of like what I've been doing with all of this. With that being said, let's talk about what I've learned this week. Day 11, lure selection based on conditions. Okay, while I'm out here dodging snakes,
and I know I heard that name Snakes before.
I've talked a lot about lures and rigs and things like that. I actually had a comment on my video from last week that mentioned match the hatch. You know, I hadn't heard that. It was actually the first time I've heard it in all the stuff I've been looking at. And so thank you for that. Super helpful, because it put me into this research hole where I came to realize that, you know, and I kind of knew this from some of the sites I've been reading, but the type of lure you're using, the color of it is super important. And especially when it comes to the time of day, type of weather, and the type of water you have going on. So based on my research, here's what I do know in a very condensed and probably overly generalized sense. Dude, I hate snakes. So sunny, like today, with clear water, you're gonna wanna use like a translucent or transparent lure that has natural colors. So we're talking like pumpkin seed, watermelon, but basically like your dark greens, your dark yellows, things like that might be in the environment, which, you know, I think that's where he's going with match the hatch. So that's sunny days with clear water. If it's a sunny day and you have dark or stained water, you're gonna really honestly use the same kind of lure as a sunny day with clear water, but you're gonna wanna add like some color to it, like maybe a chartreuse tail, pink tail, something like that. Something where it's like natural colors, but with like a pop of color. Mainly you just want something that is gonna stand out in stained water or muddy. Probably just stained. Yeah. So if it's a sunny day like today and you have, like I have here, and you have dark water, you're gonna wanna go with bright colors. Something that is gonna grab the fish's attention. And then if it's a cloudy day with dark waters, you're gonna wanna do dark lures. You're gonna want something that's really gonna basically silhouette whatever the lure is, kind of create form of contrast in the water so that they can sort of see the silhouette of it. That's really what you're going to want to go for. For me, one big question I had was like, what constitutes clear water versus a dirty, stained water? I'm in the South, and based on what I've figured out is in the South, basically clear water means you have 2 or more feet of visibility in the water. Stained water is going to be anywhere between 1 to 2 feet of visibility. And then muddy water or dirty water, honestly, still on snake watch. Honestly, I think you're going to be able to know if it's muddy water. It's going to be brown. You're probably going to walk up and be like, yeah, this is dirty water. It's going to be one of those things where you're going to stick your feet in and you're just not even going to see your toe. So that's going to be your dirty water scenario. And honestly, I've read a bunch on Reddit and a bunch of different forum sites about how, you know, the adage is bright day, bright colors, dark day, dark colors. And then honestly, you know, I've done so much research, and the amount of information out there is overwhelming, and the amount of like wives' tales, and is it wise tales or what? Doesn't matter. The amount of tales that you see from fishermen, it's kind of got me to the point where I wonder if we're just throwing things in the water hoping they hit. I think that's where we're at. I know that's especially where I'm at, is I'm just hoping it happens. So yeah, those are the rules on like weather types, water types, things like that. So that's something to definitely note. And I really probably should clarify what I'm talking about there is fishing on like a Senko. You know, if you're fishing with a worm, something like that, you know. If it is a really muddy, dark day, if it's a really muddy, stained water, you also might want to use like a loud crankbait or spinnerbait, something that's going to cause vibration, that's going to really get their attention. Just wanted to throw that out there as well. I am still whispering right now because if you can't tell, I'm in the middle of this pond and I'm trying really hard not to send vibrations throughout the pond, but I am going to have to move forward a little bit, and I'm going to switch out my lure one more time because I do have about 20 minutes left of fishing, and I'd like to make the most of it. We'll see. Y'all, let me know if y'all see a snake.
Snakes? Snakes. I don't know no snakes.
Day 12, fishing reports. Speaking of water clarity, the easiest way to know what type of clarity you're looking at for a specific body of water is to check your local fishing reports. Most wildlife departments will have these posted on their website, as well as water temperature, elevation, things like that. And they typically will give you information on the best type of lure and bait to use in that body of water. These reports are vital for any angler, primarily so they can put together a pre-fishing checklist, and so they can set up their rods and reels in advance. The last thing you want to do is show up and spend 15 minutes getting your gear ready. You want to be able to just get there and get a line in the water as fast as possible. Nobody ever caught a fish changing a lure. Well, maybe, I don't know. If you have, let me know in the comments. Day 13, selecting the proper line. In my first video, I talked about selecting line in the most basic sense. But obviously, if you watch that video, I made my line selection based on price, which I want to emphasize, that's fine. At this point, if you're just looking to get into fishing, please do that. What I've learned though is that a lot of thought can go into fishing line. Now, I'm still using monofilament line on all of my setups, but I'm contemplating a change, and here's why. All right. Fishing line is made up of 3 different types. 1, monofilament. This is the best for beginners. It's a single strand of nylon, it's easy to tie knots with, you can use it for virtually all types of fish. It's inexpensive, stretches really well, which can be great for reeling in bigger fish, and it's inexpensive. Just a reminder. The second type of line is braid. Braided line consists of fibers intertwined and, well, braided. This type of line is super strong, has minimal stretch, which will help you determine if you have a bite or not. And this is really the best type of line if you're fishing in deeper water for a monster fish.
Do I have a bite?
And the third type of line is fluorocarbon. I really hope I'm saying that right. Fluorocarbon? Fluorocarbon, doesn't matter, you can read. This line is probably what most people consider to be expert line. It's extremely sensitive, sinks into the water really well, and is practically invisible in the water, which is why most serious anglers use it, just to have the advantage. The change that I'm thinking of making is into fluorocarbon. It's definitely not because I think I'm an expert angler. I think we can all agree that I'm definitely not an expert yet. As a matter of fact, it's kind of the opposite reason as to why I'm doing it. I'm essentially looking for that edge that's gonna take me to that next level. I still think if you're just starting out though, you should probably just stick with monofilament unless you just want to drop the money on fluorocarbon, or if you're fishing in an area with a bunch of structure and cover that your hook might get hung up in a lot, then I would suggest moving to a braid. But if you're just starting out, monofilament will definitely get the job done. Day 14. Does fashion matter? Now, I'll be the first to admit that I don't always make the best fashion choices. Hard to believe, I know. But apparently the type of clothes you wear can affect your chances of success. Not only in fishing, apparently in other aspects of your life as well, but it also affects your chances in fishing too. So just this blanket statement, fashion can affect your chances in a lot of things. I'm learning this. If you're bank fishing, you're gonna wanna wear clothes that help you blend in with the environment. So essentially, think of your clothes the same way you would if you were hunting. You're gonna wanna camouflage yourself. On the bank, you wanna wear natural earth tones, things that will help you blend in with the environment. If you're on a boat or a kayak, it's the opposite. You wanna wear clothes that might blend into the sky, so brighter clothes. Obviously, as the day and the weather progresses, you wanna be mindful of these things, but just something to note, fashion does matter on the water and on the bank. With that being said though, don't let clothes stop you from fishing. Just go fish, but just be mindful. Day 15, noise and vibration. Now, if you're fishing on the shore, this probably won't be a big deal to you, but let's talk a little bit about noise and specifically about vibration. The good news is if you're sitting around with your friends on the bank or even on a boat and you're just talking, it's probably not gonna affect your fishing that much, mainly because your voice is not enough to break the surface tension of the water. Now that doesn't mean you should be running around shouting, because that might definitely penetrate, but just sitting around casually talking most likely is not going to affect your chances of catching anything. However, underwater sound travels, and it travels fast. So if you're in a boat or if you're like me and you're using a kayak, you want to be mindful of loud noises like stomping your feet, dropping things on the hull, because those things can reverberate into the water and actually cause vibration within the water that fish will definitely sense. Now, I'm not saying you can't move around on the boat or the kayak. What I am saying though is that if you do need to move, be intentional with your movement so that way you know you're maximizing your chances of success. I filmed earlier that piece with me on the kayak where I was whispering. I knew about noise and vibration, and I knew that my voice probably wouldn't affect the fish around me. However, as you could see, it was dead still on the water. There was no wind, and there was a lot of fish jumping around me, and so I was trying really hard not to affect any of my chances, which, I mean, if you saw the beginning, that actual section where I'm catching the fish is actually like 2 minutes after I filmed the kayak piece. So with that being said, you don't have to be quiet on the boat. You don't have to be quiet on the bank when it comes to talking. Don't be shouting. Don't be making a lot of noise. Just know that the real killer when it comes to your success is actually just gonna be vibration within the water. Day 16, speed of retrieve. All right, so let's talk about how much motion you should be putting in your ocean, or how fast you should reel in. I do want to caveat this particular day by saying that this can be completely nuanced, and there's really so much information that you could study this for days and not necessarily a single day, but I'm going to try to condense it into an understandable section. I wanted to say this in case some serious angler watches this video and is like, this isn't in depth enough. All right, so let's start by saying change up what you're doing. And what I mean by that is that if you're reeling in slow and you're not catching fish, well then reel in fast. If you're reeling fast and you're not catching fish, then reel in slow. Always be willing to change up your reel speed or your retrieve speed, whatever you want to call it. Be willing to experiment, try different things with it. That's super important, so just keep that in mind always. Now, let's talk basics. The speed of your retrieve should ideally match the activity level of the fish that you're fishing for. What does that even mean? There are a lot of things that determine this activity level, but the main thing that you're gonna wanna pay attention to is water temperature. A simple way of thinking of this is that warmer water equals faster movement. Colder water equals slower movement. When water warms up, the fish's metabolism is higher. So they're gonna move and react a lot quicker. Whereas in colder water, they're gonna be much more lethargic, so you're gonna wanna work your reel much slower. Again, that's so overly simplistic. I also want to say that it depends on the type of lure or bait you're using. Crankbaits, for instance, they dive deeper the faster you reel it in. So it makes sense to be in a hurry with those. I would strongly recommend you simply research this depending on the type of lure that you plan on using. Now, I will leave a cheat sheet in the description down below. This is primarily for bass fishing because that's what I'm doing, but if that's something you want to look at, it's down there. Now, I know that seems like a cop-out on this section, but I really don't want to break down the whole plethora of lure types. By the way, glad I was able to use that word in a sentence today. Nailed it. But that could be an entire video by itself. Speaking of speed though, that does move us into day 17, which is gear ratio. First, let's break down what is gear ratio. So your gear ratio is how many times the spool turns for each single turn of the handle. So if the gear ratio is 5.11, every time you turn the handle, the spool turns 5.1 times. We're diving into gear ratio because it directly correlates with reel speed, and understanding gear ratios can help you pick a reel depending on what type of fish you're gonna be fishing for, or what type of lure you're using. Now, this is another topic that we can go super deep on, so I'm gonna be surface level about it. Again, I apologize. But a good way to look at it is like this. 5.1 to 5.4 is for deep crankbaiting. 6.2 to 6.5 are your spinner baits, shallow crankbaits, and swim baits. 7.1 to 9.0 are for deep jigs, swim jigs, soft plastic bait, top water, etc. Just remember, the colder the water, the slower the reel. The warmer the water, the faster the reel. The breakdown I just gave you is based on lure technique, but you can obviously vary this based on your style of fishing. Another way of thinking about this is thinking in terms of water columns. For deep column fishing, you want a slower or a lower gear ratio. For middle column fishing, you want a mid-tier gear ratio. And for shallow or surface column fishing, you're gonna want a higher gear ratio. If fishing's a hobby you're thinking about getting into, and this is the first video in this series you're watching, I suggest you go back and watch this video right here. Otherwise, thank you very much. Be sure to like, subscribe, leave me a comment, all the good stuff. Until next time, thanks for watching.